Hi everyone, welcome to DevOps Info channel. Today we are going to take a look at one of the interesting topic which is Azure Site Recovery. So we will get started with this Azure Site Recovery and then we'll have some two or three more videos based on uh, what are the features that we have in the Azure Site Recovery. So we all know the Azure Site Recovery is a disaster recovery and a business continuity solution provided by Microsoft Azure. You would be able to have the disaster recovery solutions for the VMs which is running in the Azure or a VM which is running in your data center or even a physical machine which is running in your data center. So it helps to protect and recover your services from on-premise as well as from the other cloud platforms or even from the other Azure regions. Uh, So overall, the Azure Site Recovery enables to replicate your workloads to a secondary location and provides an automated failover and a failback. So that's one of the major benefit you have. So during in case of your data center is down or your environment is affected by ransomware, then you have a proper business continuity with this Azure Site Recovery solution, which is offered from the Microsoft. Uh, it really helps you to minimize the downtime and the data loss by providing a reliable and secure solutions for such kind of disaster recovery scenarios. Uh, but in this series, let's try to focus on one of the service which is for the domain controller, as we have the domain controllers running in all the environments. So we will try to see how effectively this Azure Site Recovery can be helpful in utilizing the service for the domain controllers which is running in our data center. So we'll have some series of videos. This is the first video where we are going to talk about an overview and how it can help us. And in the upcoming videos, let's try to get a deep dive into the configuration and see how it can really benefit us for recovering our domain controllers in such kind of scenarios. As we all know, the ransomware can spread in any kind of an environment. And let's say if an environment is affected by a ransomware, then it can target the other system, objects, devices, and everything. So it's always better to have a proper recovery plan so that you can, bring the business continuity in kind of such scenarios and then isolate the affected environment. So it's important to note that the domain controller ransomware recovery plan is should be a part of a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. Uh, we have to be prepared with such kind of recovery plan so that any organizations will be able to effectively respond to such kind of attacks and then minimize the impact of the business in such kind of scenarios. And also, the normal operations should not be affected in such kind of scenarios. So today we are going to take a look at using the Azure Site Recovery. How are we going to use the Azure Site Recovery for, especially for the domain controllers, in mitigating, in overcoming such kind of scenarios. Um, you might be asking the question, what is the main reason to go with this Azure Site Recovery? Why can't we go just with the normal, the standard recovery? Um, the native recovery is like you have isolated environment in your data center, have a backup plan, make sure the backup is stored, on a secure location, and then you have, an isolated recovery environment. And when you come across such kind of scenarios, you are going to activate that recovery environment, restore it from the clean backup, and make sure uh, the existing services can connect to it. Uh, there is always a challenge because, of course, if your environment is affected, then there is a big question: how are you sure that the ransomware is not spread to the isolated environment as well? So that's a million-dollar question, which we don't have answer most effectively if you are not using any third-party solution. So having a net recovery in kind of such scenarios is always a challenge. But however, if you're recovering a domain controller uh, in Microsoft Azure with kind of services, it's definitely going to help you in overcoming such kind of scenarios. And recovering a domain controller in an isolated environment can also be always challenged in terms of network. How are you going to prepare your network and making sure that all the clients can connect to the recovery network. So it needs a really careful planning and a lot of effort to go ahead with this option when you are going to prepare this on your data center with a isolated network. But when you talk about Azure Site Recovery, it's a disaster recovery solution provided by Microsoft, and then it enables organizations to replicate, recover their VMs and the physical servers, and also the VMs running in your data center. Uh, if you take a look at the screen, what I have right now, you see this is one of the Azure Site Recovery where I created the recovery services for it. I'm just still exploring. In the upcoming videos, we'll have some examples of how it is really working. So if you see here, over the left it says the Azure virtual machines. Yeah, you'll be able to protect your virtual machines. Like if you go simply into virtual machines, there is something called operations that you can create the recovery services vault where you can replicate this VM to a different Azure region, and then you can do more configurations. We'll take a look at that in the upcoming videos. And then the next one is like VMware missions to Azure. That's also possible. You can protect your VMware missions where if it is running in a data center, you can have the VMware replicated to the Azure. Um, and then you have the Hyper-V missions to the Azure. The same is applicable for Hyper-V missions. If you have the Hyper-V virtual missions in your data center, you could also do that. You can prepare infrastructure to equip for this service which is running in Azure. Uh, and for the physical machines, you have also an option to do this. But one thing I wanted to highlight here is like if you have your physical machines, which is running in a data center, you'll be able to configure it. But the moment when you replicate, if you want to go back to your physical machine, that's not possible because Microsoft is having an option right now to have a domain control. Let's say if you have a domain control running in the Hyper-V or VMware, you're going to replicate it to the recovery service vault, and you're activating it such kind of disaster scenario. When you're bringing it back, you can move it back to your VM. That is possible. But if you have a physical infrastructure, that is not possible. Um, so a question might come like if my data center is having all the domain controllers which is running on the physical machines. In that case, like you can have like 2 or 3 domain controllers which is running on VMware or Hyper-V. For this purpose, you can replicate them to the cloud for this service, and uh, during such kind of scenarios, you would be able to activate the domain controller, and you have sufficient and enough time to work on the ransomware part, clean up your physical missions, and later you'll be able to move your domain controller services to your data center by the virtual domain controllers which is running in your data center, and then later you'll be able to restore all your physical machines. Yeah. If you ask me, yeah, recovering any ransomware attack from a domain controller is always a complex process, and especially you need to identify the point where it and when it was affected. Only then you are going to restore it to a correct point where the infection did not happen. So in this case, if running a two virtual domain controllers is not going to be a challenge in this case to have use this service. Mm, yeah. So this is one of the benefit, and there are a lot of benefits. Like when we talk about the replication, it facilitates the ongoing replication of the domain controllers, and by continuously synchronizing the changes, it ensures that the current copy of the VM is available in the Azure, which is really crucial. And you're talking about the failover and the failback. Yes, you have an option. In the event of a ransomware attack, it allows for a seamless failover to the replicated VMs to the Azure. So this failover process ensures that the minimal downtime and enables the organization to quickly act on this attack and resume a domain controller which is running in the cloud. And you have an option called the point in time recovery. Yeah, but it's a little bit difficult to identify when the ransomware attack happened, because whatever you're replicating here in the data center, whatever we have in the data center is replicated to the cloud. But you need to find the correct point when you want to recover. So you have the option to do a point in time recovery, but you have to identify when is the best day or time to recover, and then that feature will allow the organization to recover to a specific recovery point where there's no infection. And it has the automation and orchestration. So with this automation and orchestration option, you have the better streamline of the recovery process. Like it provides the workflows and the run books. You can customize the recovery steps, and then ensuring the consistency and the efficiency of the recovery process. And of course, since the service is offered in the cloud, you have a better security and compliance. So this includes the encryption of the data in transit and in rest. So which is one of the best option which we can talk about. And you also have the testing and validation. Here, the Azure Site Recovery allows organizations to perform a non-destructive testing and validation of the recovery process. It enables the creation of the isolated environments in Azure for testing failover and failback. And it's easy, right? Because if you already have a express route connection or a site-to-site VPN to Azure, then you already meeting one of the major prerequisites. So it's just a matter of uh, having some more additional prerequisites, which will talk about the technical readiness, and then replicating your domain controller. Uh, so by leveraging this Azure Site Recovery for the domain controller, uh, you can really benefit from a good, a robust, and a reliable solution which is offered from the Microsoft. So now we'll talk about the technical readiness. The technical readiness is like you can prepare the Azure infrastructure. You need to set up the Azure Recovery Services Vault in your subscription, which we'll take a look at in the next upcoming videos. You need to deploy a virtual network in the Azure that replicates your on-premise network configuration, and also you need to set up a virtual machine that meets the requirement for the domain controller, and you need to connect the on-premise network to the Azure network by using express route or site-to-site VPN connection. So now also after the connecting the on-premise network to the Azure is the major part, and then enable replication is easy. You can install the recovery agent on your on-premise. I think the recovery agent is applicable for the physical machines, and also I think it should be applicable for the virtual machines. But we'll take a look at that in the upcoming videos. And then you have to configure the replication settings to replicate your domain controller with Azure VM. And also there is a very good options to monitor the replication. When I was just glancing to the site recovery options, there is an option called replicated items, backup items, but this is just a vanilla setup where I haven't done anything. So when we start doing it, then we'll be able to see a lot. So like even when I going to start a backup, we have an option where it's a workload running. All these options are there, but let's take a look at in the upcoming series to make sure like how this is really working, and if it is going to help us in terms of recovering your domain controller in kind of such scenarios. So overall, I would say, this Azure Site Recovery offers a lot of key features and capabilities that make it well suited for recovering, any services in the event of a ransomware attack. Um, we will, in the upcoming videos, we will take a look at how it is going to help us in terms of the domain controllers, which is running in your data center, and then we'll see the final. We'll take a look at what are the benefits, and we'll see how it is going to help us in kind of such scenarios. That's all I have to talk about today of an introduction of the Azure Site Recovery. Hopefully enjoyed, and it gave you some information about what is Azure Site Recovery. We'll talk about more and have some deep dive on this in the upcoming series. Thank you.